Glad to be here with you. We are going through a series of women in the Bible. Today is Esther. Ever heard of Esther? If you've heard this story, this is just a reminder. If you've never heard this story, I have a gift for you. It starts back in a garden where a man and a woman sinned. And there was also a serpent. We refer to him as Satan. And God says to the woman, from you, there's going to be one that's going to take the serpent and crush his head. From you, woman. You understand that? That's where the story begins, because from that point on, Satan, evil, is doing whatever it can to keep that one from coming to the earth to crush his head. Now, if you are a Christian in here, then you have heard the story that one did come. His name was Jesus, and his name is still Jesus, because he crushed the serpent's head, and he conquered death and rose from the grave. Now, not everyone knew that like you do, because not everybody lived when you lived. This story takes place about 480 before Christ. Now, before that, you need to know that the children of Israel, they were around 1000 BC. They had a king named David. And King David was pretty much the best of the best, a man after God's own heart. Not anyone else's, God's own heart. That's quite a designation. And then he had a son named Solomon, and he reigned. And then he had many, many wives. And so the kingdom just kind of grew because he had wives from other nationalities, other countries, you understand? And so this just grows and grows and grows. But then his kids were the crazy cats, and they did not take care of the place very well. And next thing you know, there's a place called Babylon, and they take over in essence, Israel. But then, after the Golden Empire, you have the Silver Empire, and that is the Persians. That's where this takes place. The Babylonians, the Persians, eventually you get all the way down to Jesus. But we're going to settle with the Persians. I want to tell you something about the Persians. The Persians love to party. Not the party like you remember back in high school, college. I'm talking about a 6-month type of party. That's a long party, okay? In fact, they knew how to party so much that even after the party, they had an after party for 7 days. Now, at this time, around 480 BC, the king's name, we'll call him Xerxes. Now, there's other names for him, but we'll just call it Xerxes for simplicity's sake. And when we say Esther, we could also say Hadassah, but for simplicity, you understand what I'm trying to say. Esther. You're with me. These are the two main characters. God's name is never mentioned in this book. However, his presence is all throughout. So even though we have King Xerxes and Esther, the main character of main characters is Almighty God. In every story that we ever tell from the stage, God, he's the main character. He's never mentioned, but his presence is all throughout. You ready for the story? King Xerxes, his land that he reigned over was 127 provinces. This was a big deal. He was the world empire at the time. This means that everyone wanted to be in with the king. So the king decides to throw a 6-month party to show everybody who he is and what he owns. And so all the gold, the silver, and whatever else he had would be presented to all these other officials for them to ooh and awe over what he had. After those 6 months, he had an after party. I'm not sure all who was invited to this, but if you had a designated driver to come pick you up, hold off because we have 7 more days of partying. Day 7, the king gets so intoxicated that he tells one of the servants, go talk to my queen, Queen Vashti. Some say Vashti, we'll say Vashti. Queen Vashti, and tell her that I want her to come over here and I want her to present herself to all these other dudes. Because what you need to know is that during this party, the 7-day party, the women partied by themselves and the men partied by themselves. But in this moment, the king says, oh, call up my queen and have her come over here. And really, the less that she wears, the better. So the servant goes over and talks to the queen and probably says something like, oh, queen, may you live forever. Just want to let you know that your husband has requested you to come over and to present yourself, and also if you could just wear the crown and nothing else, that would be fine and dandy. And she, in essence, says, you can tell the king where to shove his request, okay? Now, At that moment, the servant goes, all right. And he goes over to the king and he says, oh, king, may you live forever, or something like that. And I want you to know that the queen is not coming, and she wanted me to tell you where you can, well, you understand. And the king gets so frustrated, so angry. And the reason that he gets angry is not so much because of her not wanting to present herself, but the time and place that she is not wanting to do such an act. The whole thing is the king wants to show off everything that he has. Do you understand this? So this is a huge sign of disrespect. And then once word gets out during this party, you can't not just let this go by, because once a man is disrespected, he has to put the woman in his place, or her place. You understand? Now, we got to go to this moment that when Queen Vashti, when she says something like, I'm not coming, it's not just I don't want to show up to the party and be, oodled over by all these nasty guys. What she literally is saying is, I'd rather die than show up to this foolishness. This is a big deal, because if the king calls you in, you go in. You don't say no to the king, and she does. Next thing you know, she's no longer the queen. Is she executed? No, but she's no longer the queen. Because everyone in the kingdom, in all 127 provinces, they need to know who reigns. I am King Xerxes, no one tells me no. Do you understand this? A pretty twisted society. Fast forward. This whole story of the book of Esther is not a nice, 1 year lapse. And we're talking about, I'm going to say, probably like a decade-long story. The king seems to be moping around, perhaps, for a while, and people say, hey, king, I think it's time for a new queen. Let's have, we got this great idea. Let's have a beauty pageant, right? King, we're going to get all the young virgins, maybe even the old virgins, I don't know. We're going to get all these virgins, and they're going to come in from all 127 provinces, okay? Even here in Susa, the city capital. We're going to bring them all in. For 6 months, we'll bathe them, and they'll be treated with all these aloes and perfumes. And then for another 6 months, we'll do another cleaning, I don't know. And then you can go and you can pick from these fine women your queen. And the king goes, oh my goodness, yes, let's do that. That sounds like a great idea. So now we're going to party again. So wars and parties and wars and parties, and now we have a beauty pageant on our hands. There is one character that I need to introduce you to. His name is Mordecai. Mordecai was like a government official. He worked in the area for the government, I would assume. And so he was around, and he probably got word of things before everyone else. And he gets word that this beauty pageant's going on, and he is the one who has raised this little Jewish girl named Esther. Esther's parents must have died off at a young age, her young age, and now the next in line, the kin, would take care of that little girl, and his name is Mordecai. So even though he's her cousin, it's as if he's her father. And he says, Esther, you got to enter this contest. You're obviously going to be in this contest. There are two things that I want you to know. Two things that are the do-nots, and then one thing I want you to know. The one thing I want you to know is, because I work where I work, I will always be there for you. I will look after you. I will make sure that you're protected, that you're taken care of. I have a couple connections. Okay, I'm ad-libbing, but you understand the heart that this man has for his daughter. The two things that you're not allowed to tell, don't tell anyone this. Don't tell anyone that you're a Jew. And don't tell anyone that we're related. Those two things. Don't let anyone know that your nationality or who your people are. And for goodness sakes, do not tell them that we're related. If you keep quiet about those two things, you and I'll take care of you. You'll be okay. Because, oh my goodness, her world's getting ready to shake up. You understand? I mean, this is big stuff. And so she enters the beauty contest, and immediately, one of the eunuchs, the high order for the harem, he takes notice of her, and she is pampered more than anyone. I mean, she gets all the chips and dips she wants. I mean, this is the life that she's entering. And I would assume, I don't know how it was back then, but I would assume that when one girl kind of gets more treatment, some of them kind of flock to her because they want to be best friends with whoever's getting the best. And then there's probably some who are really angry and try to figure out how to slit her throat. You understand? Like, I'm just going off of what I know about sometimes high school girls. Okay. 6 months go by, another 6 months go by, and the king decides to pick his queen. Now, when a king picks his queen, it's not like he just goes in and goes, contestant number 7, you're the winner. Miss Congeniality, I'm so sorry. I thought we had something going on, but this is the woman, right? Like the Bachelor stuff. Not like that. The king could take all of them one at a time and do with whatever he wanted. And then, if he discarded her, she didn't win the crown. It's not like she just went back to her province of one of the 127. She then went into the harem. Anytime that the king wanted to call her in, the rest of his life, she would have to go and do whatever he wanted. But that doesn't mean the king would. Do you know what this means? This means that these virgins that the king would then take as his own, after one night, would discard them. And they would now live in the palace in a certain court, and they would live a life of widowhood, no kids, no offspring, nothing to continue the family line from them. Do you see how twisted this is? So it's not just there's a beauty contest, there's all of this is mine, and even if I don't want it, no one else can have it, objects. Do you understand? That's where women were in this society. Now, there were a few that were going to be his girlfriends, but for the majority, no. You're all just a bunch of widows to me. Fun part of the story, Esther wins. Yeah, and I mean, she's the best of the best. She loves him. Years go by. At one point, there are two guard officials, and these two guard officials, they have names. I don't remember them. These two guard officials, they plot to kill the king. They're fed up with him. I don't know what the reasoning is, but they want to kill off the king. And Mordecai, now remember, that's the cousin of Esther, he gets word that these two guys want to kill off the king. So he tells the queen tells the king, and the king has those two guys offed. It's written down in the history books. These two guys want to kill off the king. There's a guy named Mordecai. He reports to the queen reports to the king has these two guys killed. Written down in the history books, put up on the shelf for later on in the story. Enter stage right a guy named Haman. Haman was the prehistoric Hitler. This guy was a bad mamma jamma. This guy had grown in such good rapport with the king that he, at one point, received the signet ring of the king, meaning he's like second in command. Now, this guy's got some wealth, okay? He's got like 10 sons. His wife's fertile myrtle, and he's trying to grow his own empire. You understand? He's trying to move up in the ranks. In fact, he moves up so much that the king tells everyone else, when Haman enters any place, he is to be bowed down to. And oh my, this strokes his ego so much so that when he goes everywhere, everyone bows down to him. Now, there were some servants that noticed that there's this one guy who doesn't bow down to him. That guy's name is Mordecai. Mordecai he refuses to bow down to Haman. Haman doesn't know this, but these servants notice, and so they approach Mordecai, and they say, Mordecai, why aren't you ever bowing down to Haman? You know we're supposed to bow down to Haman. You just have to bow down to Haman. Why won't you bow down to Haman? And I don't know if it was like some sort of pride in his colors of his nation or what it was, but he refuses to bow down to a man unless it's the king or it's to God. And so eventually those servants think, okay, prove it. So they go over to Haman, they report it to Haman, and they say, Haman, everybody's bowing down except for this one guy. His name is Mordecai. Oh, and just to let you know, he is a Jew. At that moment, Haman focuses on the one speck of dust on the floor. Have you ever been there? It's like everything else is going great, but these small potatoes, I can't get over the small potatoes. It's like there's a feast that you can enjoy, Haman. Look at all this, people lavishing your glory on you. He's like, but it's disrespect. I can't handle no disrespect, right? So at that point, he comes up with a plan of how he can kill off Mordecai. But he doesn't just want to kill off Mordecai. He wants to kill off Mordecai's family. He wants to take Mordecai's possessions. He wants to kill Mordecai's cat, dog, and if Mordecai had a pig, he would slaughter the pig. You with me? So he goes to the king and says, "O king, may you live forever." There's a group of people, one nationality in these 127 provinces, and they kind of go with their own rules. They've got like their own God thing going on, and really they just don't obey you. You know what I think we should do? I really think that we should have a kill a Jew day and just be done with them. And the king's like, "All right, sounds good. Here's my ring." And so Haman is the one who issues this decree that goes out to 127 provinces. And on this one day specifically, on the last day of the month, if you have a neighbor of the Jewish descent, you can, with the king's permission, kill them off and their family, their women, the children, and take everything that they have. There's going to be a purge. No one for 24 hours could do anything about it. And the king's like, "Sounds good." Haman is starting to get what he wants, and there's a fear that floods throughout all the world of the Jewish people because they know that their lives now there's a time crunch. Mordecai gets word of this, and he now has fear. He trusts that God will find a way to save the day. At the same time, he knows that the time is ticking. Have you ever, in your life, wondered if God had just left for a brief moment? Like there was a season in your life where God just didn't seem to be there. Like, where is he? And even though you were brought up in church, or even though you became a Christian not too long ago, or whatever your story is, you're just like, man, if I wish you'd just say something, right? I wish you'd just send somebody, I need a sign, God, that you're still with me, and I will trust you, and I'll see it through. Throughout this whole book, God is never mentioned. It's as if God pieced out for a little bit. Mordecai, in a sense, trusts God, and at the same time, like everyone else, they're going, we were promised that one was going to come and deliver us, that there was going to be this Messiah. Where is he? Okay, Mordecai starts to fast. Mordecai starts to rip his clothes. Mordecai starts to cry out to God. And not just him, but all the Jewish people throughout these nations. And Mordecai decides to place himself in a courtyard so that Queen Esther, so that Queen Esther can see how much pain he's in. Now, Queen Esther, for years now, has been pampered and eating all the chips and dips she wants. When she sees how bad it is for Mordecai and how his clothes are ripped, and that's a sign of grief, she tries to fix the situation. Any fixers in here? Just real quick, let me just fix this problem for you and let's move on. She gathers up some clothes and sends them with a servant, and the servant takes them to Mordecai, and Mordecai refuses the gift. So the servant goes back, "O queen, may you live forever." Here's what Mordecai says. And Mordecai tells the queen, "Listen, we're about all to die. The gig's going to be up. All of our people, because of this guy named Haman, we're all going to die." And Queen Esther responds through a servant. The servant goes and reports to Mordecai what Queen Esther said. And Esther tells Mordecai, "What am I supposed to do about this? You want me to go and talk to the king? Like, don't you know that I haven't gone and talked to the king for 30 days? And don't you know that everyone else, are you the only one who's not in on this? Everyone else knows if you approach the king, then you're going to lose your life." Like, no one walks into the king's presence unannounced. Like, no one walks into the king's presence without him bidding you come and survive. Unless he takes that little scepter and gives you a thumbs up. But if he goes thumbs down, off with your head. Really, Mordecai? You want me to sacrifice my life? Like, I can't just go and do this. You don't understand. Things are different now. So then Mordecai, he responds. And we can find this in Esther chapter 4. Listen to these words. It starts in verse 12. Esther 4, verse 12 says this. And they told Mordecai what Esther had said. Then Mordecai told them to reply to Esther, do not think to yourself that in the king's palace you will escape any more than all the other Jews. For if you keep silent at this time, relief and deliverance will rise for the Jews from another place. But you and your father's house will perish. And who knows whether you have come to the kingdom for such a time as this. Then Esther told them to reply to Mordecai, go, gather all the Jews to be found in Susa, and hold a fast on my behalf. And do not eat or drink for 3 days, night or day. I and my young women will also fast as you do. Then I will go to the king, though it is against the law. And if I perish, I perish. Mordecai then went away and did everything as Esther had ordered. It's funny, Mordecai used to give her orders. Now she's giving Mordecai orders. I want to come back to this part here, but this is the most famous part of the story. It's whenever Mordecai tells Queen Esther, maybe you were born for such a time as this. Have you heard that before? Maybe you were the hero that we've all been waiting for. Maybe, in essence, maybe you're the Messiah to come. I'm probably using that too loosely, but you get the point. This guy's going to kill all of us. Maybe there's something you can do. And he says, you're not going to come clean out of this. If you don't say anything, you die. If you say something, you might die, but at least you did something about it. And then Queen Esther's response is, if I perish, I perish. There's something that turns inside of her. Let's continue the story. The story goes on that they all fast for 3 days, day and night, no water, no drinking, no food. Then she puts on something nice to wear to present herself to the king. And she goes to the king, and he sees her down the way, and he says, my queen, come on in. Whew, dodged a bullet. Thank God. What can I do for you? And she says, hey, I know that we love to party, so I would like to throw a party for you and for Haman. No one else, just the three of us. And the king says, great, let me grab Haman. Cool. So the queen sets up this feast, and the three of them start to eat. The three of them start to drink. And then the king says, my queen, what can I do for you? I would love to give you even up to half of my kingdom. What is it that I can do for you? And at that moment, the Queen Esther, she gets a case of LBS. You know what that is, right? Lower back sweat, right? She's chicken. And so she's overwhelmed with anxiety. So she goes, oh, my king, you know what I want to do? I want to throw another party tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm going to throw another party just for you and Haman, and then I'll tell you my request. So let's finish up this party, and then tomorrow let's do it again, and then I will tell you what I want. And the king goes, party? I love to party. Let's throw another party. It sounds good. My name is Xerxes, and I like to party. So Haman leaves, the king leaves, the queen stays, and Haman is on his way home. And once again, he's going by. People are probably bowing down, and there's this one guy named Mordecai. Hey, Haman, Mordecai. And Mordecai won't bow down to him. And Haman is so irate. He goes home. He starts to tell his servants. He starts to tell the officials in his house. And he starts to tell his wife. His wife. And she says, hey, this Mordecai thing, just go ahead and take care of it now. Don't wait till the last month on that one day for Kill a Jew Day. Just go ahead and kill him now. In fact, I think that we have some lumber. Call up the carpenters and just throw up a nice set of 70-foot gallows in the backyard. Now, I don't know about you. Help me out here. How tall is this ceiling, you think? Tall, exactly. It's taller than this, I know that. A little excessive for one killing, but it's going to let everyone know who's to be respected. Haman says, it's a great idea. My wife, I knew I married you. God ordained. Great. It was a joke. So he has this idea, I'm going to have the carpenters build this, and tomorrow morning I'm going to go talk to the king, and instead of genocide, we're going to have a little homicide, and we'll get this thing taken care of. And then everyone will know who I am. That night, the king he couldn't sleep. The king just stirred all night to the point where he said, hey, somebody turn on the History Channel. So somebody comes in and they start reading the history to the king. And he starts reading all of this, and he gets to the point where the story about this guy named Mordecai who turns in these 2 guards of the threshold of the king's quarters, and how they had planned the coup, the plot to kill the king, how Mordecai told the queen told the king, and those 2 were killed. And when the king heard this late in the wee hours of the morning, he says, did we do anything for Mordecai? Was anything, was he ever rewarded? Did we ever give back to him for, turning these 2 guys in? I mean, his life was on the line by doing that. Has anything been done for Mordecai since then? And History Channel said, no. And he says, who's out there? And it was early in the morning, here comes Haman. And Haman's got the blueprints of this great idea of how he wants to kill off this one guy named Mordecai. And before he can say, oh, king, may you live forever, I've got this grand idea for a homicide. What do you think of it? The king says, hey, I got a question for you, Haman. What should be done for the person who the king delights in? Like, what should we do for someone like that the king just truly delights in? What should be done for them? Now, Haman thought, oh, he's talking about me. So Haman says, your horse. You need to put that person up on your horse, king. And they need to wear your robes, king. And you need to have some huge official in the kingdom parading them around town, saying, hear ye, check out this person that the king delights in. That's what you need to do. I mean, all the pomp and circumstance and all the chips and dip they want, that's what they deserve. And the king says, I love it, Haman, and I want you to do it. Wait, what? Yes, I want you to do it for that guy over there named Mordecai. Oh, the irony. Haman is now the guy parading this guy named Mordecai that he hates so much that he wants to kill even Mordecai's pigs. And now Haman's the guy parading him around. He gets done parading him around. He goes home. He tells his wife. She has no words of condolence. Now he's angry. Now the servants come and say, oh, Haman, you're being bid to the next party. Party, I like to party. So Haman goes to the party where there's the queen, the king, and Haman sitting there. And after the dinner, now they're drinking. And once they're drinking, the queen says, here is my request, O king. And he says, what is it, my dear? And she says, someone wants to kill off my people. Wait, what? Yes, and if it was just like they just wanted to move us in to become slaves or take us to a different territory, I would not ever even come to you about this. But there's this one person who wants to kill off my whole race. And the king gets furious and says, no way. No way is this possible. Who is it? Who is it? And I will hang them high. You just tell me, queen. You tell me who it is. And at that moment, she turns and she points and she says, this is your guy. It's Haman. What? The king's furious. He storms out. Haman now realizes, wait, you're a Jew? He starts to freak out, literally, to the point where he's on the couch with her, pleading for his life, begging, if I would have only known that you were a Jew, I never would have said what I said. Please, please, please have mercy on me. Talk to the king because my life is on the line. The king comes in, sees that he's on the same couch that his queen is on. That's a no-no. You don't do that. And the king says, bind him up. The servants put a bag over his head. And then one of the servants says, hey, king, just to let you know, he had a pair of gallows put up behind his house, like 70 foot tall, taller than this building. You want to just use that? He's like, yeah, let's use that. And so they hang Haman that day. The rest of the story kind of goes where Mordecai takes the position of Haman, in essence. And Mordecai and Esther are the ones who get to write a new decree. Once the king says something, you can't take it back. So kill a Jew day is still on. But you can combat that with saying any Jew on that day, if someone approaches you, you have the right to bear arms. And you can kill off their family, and you can take all of their possessions. during that time, there was a fear that ran through the land, and it wasn't from the Jews, it was people from the Jews. To the point where people were saying things like, some of my best friends are Jewish. You ever said something like that? Or like, I'm really thinking about considering Judaism. I've looked through it, and I think I'm going to be a convert. And seriously, people started to become Jews. I tell you that story to come back to this one part, and this is it. There was a moment where Queen Esther says, in essence, what does this have to do with me? Mordecai, do you not realize that I will lose everything if I go talk to the king? I'll lose my status. I'll lose my position. I'll never be pampered again. He'll kill me. You know what happened to Vashti because she crossed the line? Do you really expect me to do this really? Now, some people have really, they press on Esther pretty harshly. And in my mind, I do some, but at the same point, this girl didn't ask for this. I have a little bit of compassion. She was a part of a beauty contest that was so twisted. What are the odds of her winning that? What a coincidence. Coincidence. You really want me to give all this up? But then when Mordecai speaks some truth to her, not feelings, but truth, and gets to her brain that you're going to die anyway, her response is, if I perish, I perish. I really believe when a man and a woman, when they make a decision, and the decision is, if I perish, I perish, but this is the direction I'm going. When someone does that, that's when they're not playing t-ball anymore. In fact, they're not looking at themselves anymore. When a person decides, when they say something so bold as, if I die, I die, but this is what I'm going to do, that's when a person looks back in history and says, everything leading up to this was all about me. From this point on, life's not about me. Before, everything was done for me. From this point on, my life is for someone else. In small group, just this past Thursday, 3 days ago, somebody was talking about who's married. They said, when you get married, you do realize that you're selfish, but you're living with someone who's a fully functioning human being. When you have kids, though, that's when you realize how much you have to give because they can't give anything back. When a person becomes a Christian, when God grabs hold of a man, that man looks back and realizes everything that Jesus has done through all eternity leading up to that moment was all for him. And when you look and see what Jesus has done for you, you then look to the future and realize, how can I not live for him? And what that does is that unlocks something for us. It doesn't just give us a warm, fuzzy feeling that the Lord of the universe cares about us. What it does is it helps us to say something so bold as Esther does. If I die, I die. Why? Because he died for me. Or let's put it another way. If I share the gospel with those people, and if I get laughed at, I get laughed at. Why? Because at one point, the Lord of the universe had a crown of thorns on his head, wrapped with purple robes, blindfolded, beat, ripped apart, and had Roman guards surrounding him, spitting on him, and laughing at him. And why did he do that? He did that for me. So if I get laughed at, I get laughed at. Why? Because he was laughed at for me. If I lose my life, I lose my life. Why? Because this one didn't lose his life, but he gave it up. Big difference. He gave up his life. Why? On a cross. Why? So that one day I could gain my life. I can lose. Why? Because he gave it up for me. Do you understand this? When a person comes to Jesus Christ, this is the whole thing. When a person comes to Jesus Christ and they start running in the big leagues, when they start saying things like, if I perish, I perish. If I lose, I lose. If I'm embarrassed, I'm embarrassed. If I'm laughed at, I'm laughed at. When they start saying those sorts of things, they realize there's adult consequences for my actions. Everything else that I've done in my life was all about me. Now things are different because he thought of me. And I also want to throw this in there before we take communion. Oftentimes we look at the miraculous things of our lives. We think, let me put it another way, we look at the churchy things. Like that time that the person shared the gospel with you, that's the moment that Jesus grabbed a hold of you. Or that revival, or that music that we just sang, those sorts of things. We think that's when we're really close to God. But if you look at the story of Esther, you know where God is? God is working through the drunkenness of a king and his stupidity. God is working through a prehistoric Hitler. God is working through an ignorant virgin girl. God is working through all these consequences set up like a king can't sleep at night, so he brings out the History Channel, and it just so happens it lands on the page about this one time that a Mordecai guy saved his life. When we look back in our lives, I'm not justifying all the stupid things we've done, but what I am saying is God uses even the foolishness that I've been a part of for my good in the future.